troubleshooter was an idea that game developer Warren Spector had in the back of his mind as early as 1993. His interest in tabletop games and choose-your-own-adventure books gave him an interest in creating a video game which gave a sandbox of tools to the player and allowed their imaginations to run wild. Ultimately, the game was proposed in 1994 to Origin Systems, in which he had worked on the Ultimate series under, but the project ultimately didn't get off the ground. Afterwards, Spector joined the Looking Glass team that worked on System Shock, a first-person game where you explore a station overrun with monsters, controlled by an AI. After shipping more games with Origin, he left in 1996, with his last contributions being playtests of Dark Camelot, which later became Thief: The Dark Project. Spector grew tired of the constant limitations put on him during development, and the rejection of his dream game. He was planning to join Electronic Arts and work on a Command & Conquer game, when the legendary John Romero stepped in and offered to work at his studio, Ironstorm, which would give him the biggest development budget and marketing budget of any game he had ever worked on, and would allow full creative control over the project. Who would say no to that? Spector, after years of working on and producing games, had become a proficient developer, and he now had the chance to make his dream project. Deus Ex released in June 2000 for PC, shortly after the disastrous launch of Daikatana from the other Ironstorm branch, which restored goodwill from the studio. Warren Spector assembled a team and sought to make a game that resolved issues he had with two key genres, first-person shooters and stealth games, which he often felt didn't give you much choice and had very rigid systems. He then took his love for RPGs and mixed them into the game, creating an FPS RPG stealth hybrid game. The game has since gone on to spawn a franchise, and it is regarded as one of the most prophetic video games and pieces of entertainment. Considering it's been over 25 years since the game's launch, it's time to see if it stacks up. As we've established, Deus Ex is a first-person shooter with role-playing elements implemented, as well as stealth mechanics. At its release, this made the game stand out from many other titles on the market, since this combination of genres hadn't really been done before. Or at least, not to this degree. The FPS mechanics are fairly standard as far as things go. You can move around, look around, crouch, jump, shoot guns, use melee weapons, grenades, tools, and interact with objects and characters in the environment. Though I say jump, but the jump height is very low in this game. You need a box or another object to make simple jumps. You can jump whilst crouching, thus allowing easier access to things such as vents or windows, which would otherwise be difficult or impossible to get into without the help of additional objects. It also makes platforming less cumbersome than other FPS games from around the same time. Your interaction with the environment is mostly comprised of picking up items for later use, interacting with keypads, security terminals, or computers to either get more items, gain more information, open or close doors, and shut down security systems. This encourages exploration of the levels, as the more you explore, the more likely you are to find and obtain useful items or information that can get you through the game. When it comes to shooting, Deus Ex has a weapon bloom mechanic, where standing still whilst using the weapon makes it pretty accurate, whereas moving around causes the accuracy to diminish greatly. It encourages the player to be more tactical when encountering enemies, as opposed to circle strafing them to death like in most games at the time. At least early in the game, this is. You're encouraged to go more for headshots for maximum damage. Enemies are accurate with their shots, but similar to Half-Life, they will retreat if they take too much damage, which on the one hand adds a sense of immersion, since they are humans that value their lives, and on the other hand it works for gameplay, because it means that even if the player doesn't manage to outright kill the enemy, they can weaken them enough for them to be taken out of the equation in battle, or be easily chased down and killed. As far as the actual combat is concerned, it's mostly fine. The mechanics work fine enough, but there isn't as much weapon impact as something like Half-Life, and enemies barely react to your initial shots. Plus, sometimes the accuracy can just be stupid. Even while standing still with a fully upgraded weapon, I can miss a shot with a sniper rifle, despite my crosshair being on the enemy's head. You can get used to this by either quick saving frequently or just aiming above the enemy's head to give a higher chance of a hit, but even then it's annoying to deal with, because failure in a game shouldn't come because of either inconsistent, unreliable, or obtuse mechanics. It should come because of a mistake on the player's part. When a shot misses, despite the crosshair being at full accuracy, there's no lesson for me to learn or skill for me to improve on. I will admit that there might be a consistent logic going on with the game here, and if I'm wrong, please correct me. There is a good variety of weapons that all serve unique purposes. The pistol is a simple but reliable option. The shotgun is helpful for close encounters. The assault rifle kind of sucks until you upgrade it. The sniper is obviously useful for long range. The crossbow can not only take out enemies, but work as a distraction, and you can retrieve your bolts, essentially giving you unlimited ammo so long as you keep track. I've seen people complain about the tranq darts and that they don't instantly take out enemies, but they're meant to be used more for group takedowns, as you can shoot multiple targets and they'll all fall unconscious very quickly. There's RPGs for groups and mechs, there's landmines which function as both grenades and trip mines, you have EMPs, and so on and so forth. So as far as combat options go, you have plenty to suit your needs, whatever your approach may be. But even then, the biggest problem I have with this game is the stealth mechanics. Deus Ex takes major inspiration from Thief the Dark Project, which Warren Spector briefly worked on, and it allows the player to stealth most of the game if they want. You can silently take down enemies both up close and from afar, and the game also gives you suppressors for weapons. The problem is the logic with the mechanics. So, for example, if you have a baton and want to silently take down an enemy in a non-lethal way, your first instinct will be to hit him in the back. However, all this does is just make him turn around and start attacking whilst alerting everyone. What you actually want to do is hit him just above the belt line, which knocks him out. Why this is the case, I really don't understand. It also doesn't seem to work whilst the target is moving, so you will want to make sure they're standing still. You can stun them, which holds them in place temporarily, and you deal 4 times as much damage whilst they're in this state. Silently killing enemies is where things get ugly. If you shoot an enemy in the head, instantly killing him, he lets out a death scream whilst he dies, which will alert nearby enemies. This also applies to melee weapons. What this means is that if you want to do stealth, you can't just snipe everyone from afar as they might hear someone die. But I think this mechanic is stupid for many reasons. An enemy could be completely out of view of another, and yet his death will still alert the other. And there are many times where you will have no way of knowing how many enemies are in an area or where they are. So this is punishing the player for no reason and discourages long-range use of weapons such as the sniper unless you are absolutely sure they are out of range. Now, to be fair, the hearing distance of enemies in Deus Ex is pretty small. There's times where I've fired an unsuppressed firearm maybe 20 meters from the enemy and they didn't react. So it's not unmanageable. If it was a case of I shot the enemy in the stomach and he screamed as he died, I wouldn't mind it. But why does the enemy scream after I blow his brains out? I get it's a video game, so logic be damned, but shouldn't I be rewarded for my better accuracy? This also makes the stealth pistol really bad for stealth unless you upgrade your pistol skill to the max, since it does less damage than the regular pistol and it still causes death screams. At that point, the regular pistol would be better for stealth. If you keep your distance, nobody will hear the shots. It's really stupid to include a weapon that specifies that it's good for stealth, only to be terrible at it. This means that experienced players will probably never use it, and newcomers will be tricked into using it only to be punished. The funny part though is that the stealth mechanics of the game are kind of broken because of the way the enemies detect sound. In Deus Ex, if an enemy hears a sound, it will react to it. However, it will exclusively react to it. It won't react to any new sounds whilst in this state. And you can use this to your advantage. Normally, an enemy would hear your footsteps if you run up behind them, but let's say I shoot a crossbow bolt at his feet. He will focus on the noise of the bolt and ignore my footsteps, allowing me to run up behind and take him out. And if you want to get really skilled, then you can use your footsteps as a distraction and jump around the enemy and hit him in the back. It's almost as if you're playing Spy in Team Fortress 2, performing trick stabs. This game was developed on the first Unreal Engine, which was a groundbreaking piece of technology for the time, but it also means that the game is very easy to break. Another example is the lambs. They have hitbox collision, meaning that if you keep placing them and taking them off walls, you can create a makeshift ladder. Anyway, my problem with the stealth mechanics isn't that they're broken, it's mostly that they're difficult to understand, and so players attempting them will often be punished without understanding what they did wrong, which I don't think should be the case with games. If I fail, I should be able to assess the situation and understand the mistake I made so that I don't make it again. It's why some people say the stealth mechanics in this game are broken. Not because they are, but because they feel that way. Once you understand how the mechanics work, then you actually can do fun and challenging playstyles in stealth. However, unless you're actively trying to do a stealth playthrough, there isn't really much reason to partake in stealth, especially late game. Early game it makes sense because you're weak and your weapon accuracy isn't good. Mid to late game though, your weapons have gotten much better and you'll be much stronger. Unless you just don't engage with the RPG mechanics whatsoever, as a sort of challenge run, which I respect. Because of this, most situations are almost always faster and more efficient if you just go loud and shoot up the place. Stealth will take longer and require more effort to pull off correctly. Here I just shoot and strafe, and whatever damage I take I can easily repair with medkits or a health bot. The game never requires you to use stealth, which is nice, but there's only one situation where there's an actual benefit to doing it. Otherwise, just go crazy. And to be fair, this is a lot of fun, but it just makes sneaking around and getting takedowns redundant. You don't even get extra skill points for stealth or anything like that. But speaking of the RPG mechanics, it's where a lot of the fun of the game comes from. Because Deus Ex doesn't really care much for game balance, or at least doesn't seem to care. It just wants the player to have as much freedom as possible with a level or playstyle. So you have multiple categories that you can upgrade to improve aspects of your character, each with 4 levels: Untrained, Trained, Advanced, and Master. Take the computer skill. At Untrained, you can't really do anything. You can read computers and terminals, but that's about it. At Trained, you can now hack into computers to gain information, hack into terminals to access security, or ATMs for money, though you are on a timer. At Advanced, it increases the hack timer and allows you to control gun turrets. You can lockpick doors in the game, but some take way too many lockpicks to get through. Upgrading this skill lowers the lockpick strength of any door. The same effect with electronics. Medicine increases the effects of healing. Environmental training increases the effectiveness of ballistic armor, camo, hazmat suits, and rebreathers, so it's useful for stealth, traversal, and combat. And there's the weapon categories, which increases the accuracy, damage, recoil, and reload time of a set of weapons. You can also find upgrades for these around the environment too. The one thing I do love about Deus Ex that a lot of RPGs with guns annoy me with is that even at a low level, guns do a lot of damage. They do get increased, of course, but if I headshot a guy untrained, they still die. Of course, doing extra damage is helpful, but the main reason you would upgrade these categories is the other effects. Whether or not you're an expert marksman with years of experience, or you've never held a gun in your life, bullets still hurt people, but your effectiveness with the gun does change with experience. Due to these RPG mechanics, you can create different builds, unlock abilities, and make current playstyles more effective. Swimming is pretty useless though. For example, if I was committing to a pure combat build, then I probably wouldn't focus on electronics or lockpicking, since I could either blow the door up or loot the key from the corpse of one of the guys I killed. It also probably wouldn't be that useful to upgrade pistols, as I would mainly be focusing on rifles and explosives. This would make it harder to obtain information, as I probably wouldn't be hacking into stuff as much and would have to find logins or keycodes, but every playstyle has a downside. If I was going pure stealth, then I would probably focus on computer, lockpicking, and electronics to create paths of least resistance, and then mostly upgrade melee and pistol, maybe rifle a bit for the benefit of the sniper. The nice thing about Deus Ex though is that you're not locked into one playstyle, and even before the game starts, it gives you the option to invest in some categories like most RPGs do. So if before starting the game you know you want to do a melee build, then you can invest in low tech a bit to make it decent at the start. You gain more skill points by completing objectives and by discovering new areas. You can also find augmentation canisters which add a bunch of abilities to the player. Some of these can be damage resistance, some of them can be faster walking and higher jump height, some can be quiet footsteps or invisibility, some can be longer breathing time when underwater, some can recharge health, some increase your accuracy in targeting enemies. And oftentimes when given an augmentation canister, you have a choice between two different abilities to suit your build. And these are permanent upgrades as well, so you have to be careful. The RPG mechanics add a lot of replayability to the game to try out different ways to play. They may not be as fleshed out as other RPG games at the time, such as Baldur's Gate or The Elder Scrolls, but they suit the game's needs well. Plus, Warren Spector and his team weren't attempting to be the best in every category.
I did consider the possibility, if they compared us to pure shooters, pure stealth games, and pure role-playing games, we would be in a world of trouble. But the whole point of the game was to test that and see if we could get past that assessment. And frankly, I was terrified. Our shooter mechanics and experience, 75% as good as Half-Life. Our stealth experience, 75% as good as Thief. Our role-playing experience, 75% as good as whatever BioWare was doing. And if we get judged on the basis of any individual genre, we're doomed, because we're just not going to be as good. But if players figure out that that combination lets them play however they want, if people get that, we're going to rule the world.
What elevates this even more is the level design and structure of the game. The opening level on Liberty Island is a great vertical slice of what the rest of the game will be like. Deus Ex will drop you into a level with an objective to complete. How you go about achieving it is up to you. On Liberty Island, your job is to take down terrorists who are occupying the Statue of Liberty. You can talk to some NPCs to get some resources or unlock different paths into the statue. You can go non-lethal or kill everyone on sight, loud or quiet. You can head in through the front door or sneak in via the roof. There's also a side objective to complete where you can save a captured UNATCO operative, and the objective is completed when you confront the leader at the top and either kill or arrest him. You then head to UNATCO, which is right outside for a debriefing. After this, the game keeps these level design principles but expands on them. The next section has you exploring Hell's Kitchen in New York. Here there's multiple side objectives, NPCs, and areas to discover, which can all be missed or skipped. Smuggler's Den is a good example. Throughout this section, many characters reference Smuggler, who is a paranoid individual who hides in a secure location underground. To gain access, you either have to find the passcode or sneak in. Once in, he will offer weapon mods and items at a high price, but offers to reduce the price if you can go and save an associate of his who was taken captive. He then gives you a key to the sewers where you explore and take out guards and security systems before then escorting the man out. When you return to Smuggler, he will give you a major discount on the items. Or another, your brother tells you that you can head to his apartment in Hell's Kitchen if you need some supplies. However, terrorists occupy the hotel, and you can clear them out for the residents. This is all optional, by the way. Not every side objective is super fleshed out, but they almost always offer meaningful rewards for doing them. It also gives more opportunities for the player to use the gameplay mechanics. At worst, they will give you points which you can use to upgrade. Plus, another detail is that you can complete the side missions in a non-linear order. For example, let's say someone asks you to kill somebody else and they'll give you an item in exchange for it. Well, unlike a lot of games where you will first have to activate the quest, then complete the objective, in Deus Ex you can complete the objective first. So when you go and talk to the quest giver afterwards, you can tell him that you already completed the task.
How much?
I got a lamb. You know what that is? $7.50.
Pretty steep for secondhand goods.
Either that or you work for it. You into fighting? I need someone to take care of the dealer downstairs.
Already dead.
Yeah? You killed him?
Just another parasite.
Hot damn. That guy you just killed? He's been in my way for months. Now I got the whole station. You can have the lamb. Now I can afford me a Gep gun.
Also, a nice feature is that the game allows you to make notes of your own if you want to keep track of things. Deus Ex has quite dense levels. Almost every NPC either gives you a side objective, items, information that's useful to your mission, or just general world building, and there's a lot to explore with each level, such as multiple paths, rewards for different approaches, and inspecting the environment. The level in Hong Kong is probably my favorite. Every section is just filled with so much to do on top of the main objective, which itself evolves quite a bit from exploring to then getting involved in triad wars and eventually infiltrating a secret lab. You go to France and have to sneak around in public, going through bars, shops and apartments, asking questions whilst avoiding law enforcement. It's a perfect mix of allowing the player to explore at their own pace, while still keeping them on their toes and allowing for different options. You even get to explore the Paris catacombs. A criticism I have though is that the last few levels of the game do feel barren by comparison. I wouldn't say there's a bad level in Deus Ex, but there is a noticeable dip in quality in the last 20% of the game. On the one hand, these levels do contain some of the best combat and stealth encounters in the game, and you'll be leveled up enough by this point to use most of your mechanics. On the other hand, there's really not much to do besides that. It doesn't bother me too much because it means I get to let loose for the last couple hours, but compared to New York, Hong Kong or France, it's lacking. Harvey Smith, the lead designer for the game, who would later go on to be the director for the Dishonored series, said that one change he would have made to the game is make it 25% shorter and make the 75% that's there denser to avoid this issue. But I think it speaks to how well Deus Ex has aged. The worse the game gets is, it's still fun and well designed. And it's why, despite lacking in some areas compared to other games of the time, and maybe even now, Deus Ex is still a one-of-a-kind experience. There's not many games with the levels this fleshed out, with a variety of playstyles and replayability. The game's pace is pretty much entirely dictated by the player aside from a few instances. If you just want to bum rush through the game, then you can. If you want to take time to explore the world and see all the game, then yeah, you're rewarded for that too. Even the Eidos Montreal games, which I love by the way, can struggle to capture all of the elements that make this game a marvel of game design, both back in 2000 and even today. Deus Ex wasn't a super impressive game in terms of technology. Graphically, it was beaten out by many other games that year or earlier. and the system specs for the game were low even for 2000. The game wasn't remembered for its technology or how pretty it was. It was remembered for its innovative game design. And all these years later, very few games have managed to come close to achieving what this game did, let alone surpass it. It can be janky at times and annoying at others, but when it all comes together, there's nothing like Deus Ex. When it comes to narrative, Deus Ex has a lot to offer on many fronts. The game usually starts off a level with a specific topic and then fleshes it out more as you continue, an example being the opening. The first cutscene shows two guys having a conversation about the Grey Death virus, which has taken storm all over the world. There is a cure to the virus known as ambrosia, but it's expensive and not given to many people, aside from government officials and the wealthy, leading to a number of riots.
The secondary unit should be online soon. It's currently undergoing preparation and will be operational within 6 months. My people will continue to report on its progress. If necessary, the primary will be terminated.
We've had to endure much, you and I, but soon there will be order again. A new age. Aquinas spoke of the mythical city on the hill. Soon that city will be a reality, and we will be crowned its kings. Not better than kings. Gods.
Terrorists at the Statue of Liberty have taken a shipment of ambrosia, and thus UNATCO, United Nations Anti-Terrorist Coalition, sends in the new recruit, J.C. Denton, to both test his skills and resolve the situation. His brother Paul is also there to help out, as he's been with UNATCO for a while. Should be mentioned that this game takes place in the future. The game itself doesn't specify when, but future entries agreed upon 2052 is when Deus Ex takes place. So JC infiltrates and deals with the terrorists until he encounters the leader. Now you can just arrest or kill him and leave it at that, but if you engage in conversation with him, you learn more about the motivations behind the terrorists.
Don't shoot. I surrender.
So you think you know better than FEMA what to do with this month's ambrosia shipment?
You're too late. It's on its way back to the people, and you can't do a damn thing about it.
Tell me about the shipment, and I'll order the troops to pick you up as a prisoner instead of a corpse.
Ask away. We already won this round.
Where are you taking it?
We're just giving ordinary people the same chance to survive as the bureaucrats in Washington.
You'll have to unload in New York because the choppers would spot you at sea.
I think the government made the plague on purpose to get rid of the population growth.
Just answer the question.
Don't believe me? It's all in the numbers. For 100 years, there's been a conspiracy of plutocrats against ordinary people.
Do you have a single fact to back that up?
Number one, in 1945, corporations paid 50% of federal taxes. Now they pay about 5%. Number two, in 1900, 90% of Americans were self-employed. Now it's about 2%.
So?
It's called consolidation. Strengthen governments and corporations, weaken individuals. With taxes, this can be done imperceptibly over time.
What a bombshell to drop at the beginning of the game, and in an optional conversation. The scary part is, as I've shown, most of what he says is true and can be proven. America over the course of the 20th century, and up to today, has been driven more to its economy and maintaining structure over the populace. In 1944, the US dollar became the primary reserve currency used worldwide, meaning that they have the world in a tight grip, which requires foreign powers to play nice with inflation. If America's economy suffers, then so will the rest of the world's. It's obviously bad for the citizens as well. America pushed for self-employment to become a thing of the past because it basically allows massive corporations to operate at such a high level that nobody really knows who they're working for. Freelancing is a thing, of course, but the payment for most jobs is well below the standard of living. Even government jobs don't do it for most people anymore, as you will often see people work multiple jobs just to keep the lights on and put food on their table. Especially since some jobs will offer benefits that you won't get if you go freelance. Most countries like America want docile citizens who will do anything to get by. Sure, minimum wage has increased, but they haven't caught up with inflation and likely won't until another stock market crash. And most of the time, if the stock market and the economy is doing well, it's usually the people at the top benefiting, not people at middle class or lower. And freelancers often inadvertently end up helping these corporations because they can just hire expendable contractors to get work done without requiring further consolidations or benefits. And getting back to what the terrorist says, yes, it's been confirmed that many large businesses hold money in offshore accounts to avoid paying taxes, which means they get to abuse the system, whereas the average person struggles to get by. And besides, there's several loopholes that corporations will use to get around it. Sometimes they cancel projects or sell off parts of the company as a tax write-off, if they're that desperate. The obvious question is, why do all this? Well, successful organizations or people have been shown to have more control in law and politics. A good example of this is one in the entertainment industry. Copyright laws have been changed massively over the years in ways that make it harder and longer for properties to enter the public domain. These changes all suspiciously happened right around when Disney was about to lose the rights to the original Mickey Mouse cartoons. Mickey Mouse is a powerful brand for Disney, so they can't really lose the IP. And so as a result of these changes in laws, they were able to hold on to the IP for much longer than they should have. And this means that the number of IPs that will enter the public domain will get lower and lower as time goes on. Now, that's just the entertainment industry. Most wealthy people in positions of power don't seek to destroy the little man, at least I don't think they do. It's more so that they try to seek any benefits they might gain from certain changes they make to the world or the law, regardless of if it betters or worsens the lives of the general public. It's 2025 as I make this, but a lot of this information has been known for a while. It's just not often that you see a piece of entertainment go into this much detail about it. Most of the time it's either watered down so as to be easily understandable by the general public, or so as to not spark controversy. One of the most controversial aspects of Deus Ex is the constant references to terrorism in the game. It's poetic that you play for an organization that was formed to fight terrorism just under 2 years before Homeland Security was formed, which of course happened due to the 9/11 terrorist attacks. Famously, people like to point out that you can't see the World Trade Center in the background of the New York level. This was coincidence, it was due to a texture limitation with the game. Over the years, many have speculated the terrorist attacks to be an inside job, and it's mainly because it wouldn't be out of character for the United States to do so, especially since in 1962 they proposed Operation Northwoods, which would have staged terrorist attacks against the American government in Cuba and then blame it on Cuba to justify going to war with them. The only reason this didn't happen is because JFK halted it. The man also famous for trying to meet with Russian officials to stop wars, and the military was annoyed with him for wanting to keep the peace. He was also assassinated under very mysterious reasons. War makes money, so after 9/11 you get Homeland Security and defense contractors and they make a killing off it. Regardless of whether you believe 9/11 was staged or not, there were many people in the war business that benefited from the war in Iraq and the war on terror as a whole. You spend all this money on having a strong army and a strong military, you have to use it on something to justify it. And this isn't to make light of the tragedy, believe me. Over 3,000 people died that day or in the following days. But terrorism never was as big of a threat to America as they made it out to be. More people die in car accidents or of cancer each year. Of course, terrorism's a problem and should be made an example of, but it's more so about you believing it's a bigger threat than it actually is. Because certainly all the money that's spent towards it and away from stuff that might actually matter or benefit the country makes more sense, especially when it's a famous and powerful landmark of America. The game even later goes on to talk about how one-world governments and multiculturalism only ends up benefiting the elites.
If the US spirals into another civil war, a pretext, nothing more. The whole project of world government, going back to the League of Nations, has been funded and manipulated mainly by wealthy bankers. Remember that the UN itself was built on land donated by John D. Rockefeller. Get on board. The wealthy have always been the ones to profit from one world government. This crackdown is the work of Majestic 12.
You mean the European Union?
They are a group of conspirators who have been seizing governments all over the world.
I don't care what they call themselves. I have seen it since I was a girl, the plotting and scheming of corporations to make Europe into one big country with no separate languages, cultures, or tastes.
It's more than Europe they plan to unify.
When a cultural identity is gone, people will seek another community to be a part of, which is why you see people desperately trying to create their own small communities removed from the rest of the world. I can use an example of this being a Welshman. Wales has a long history and revered culture, which has slowly been evaporated due to the country being essentially turned into England 2.0. Ac mae Cymraeg yw'r ffrodofol, mechan a ffrare Gymru yn sered Saesneg, neu dim ond gwbl Cymraeg. It's also why people are more radicalized nowadays. I could go on, but this is meant to be a video about Deus Ex. The point is that there's very few games or pieces of entertainment that drop this many bombs on the player about how the real world works, and it's inside of a very fun and engaging video game. I really don't see many games nowadays even attempting this. If there are other examples, please let me know, I'm interested. Even later Deus Ex games would water down these aspects. It's one of the best things about this game. Not only is it a really fun game, it educates you and encourages you to look into these things, or just be aware of them. Deus Ex released in the right time where the technology to make the game existed, but games were still being figured out. And thus there wasn't anybody saying what you can or cannot do in most cases. I also realized that I got very sidetracked, so let's discuss the story of the game. The plot structure of the game is mostly very simplistic. It's just JC traveling to different areas such as New York, Hong Kong, or France to meet with characters and team up with them, kill somebody, or acquire an item needed for the plot. Meanwhile, the player gets to have fun with the mechanics. At first, you're hunting the NSF and stopping them from stealing ambrosia, but at the start of the game, it's mostly a fantasy of being an action hero taking down terrorists. You return to UNATCO HQ afterwards, and can have many conversations with the staff, obtain weapons and upgrades, and get debriefed. There's even other agents you can talk with, such as Agent Navarra, who isn't really trusting of you at first and looks down on you, especially if you try to go non-lethal. If you go guns blazing, murdering everyone on sight, then she warms up to you more.
New partner, JC Denton. Don't tell me you're going to wear those sunglasses during a night operation.
My vision is augmented.
At least it is a ways that we know when it's not Paul.
Forgive my interruption. I just wanted to say that I look forward to working with you, Agent Navarra. Also, excuse me, I've got to be briefed by Mr. Manderley.
I do not expect you to perform as well as Agent Herman, but the mission will require us to do more than frighten the NSF with our baggy coats that make us look bigger than we really are.
I am prepared to perform my duties.
You are not afraid to kill. I am pleased. The last thing I would expect from the brother of Paul.
You mechs might have copper wiring to reroute your fear of pain, but I've got nerves of steel.
You are not a mech. You do not know what it is like.
What's it like to stand around revving your actuators while the more advanced units complete the mission? No thanks.
It was my error to believe that UNATCO's superweapon would appreciate the chance to prove himself.
Just give me the next objective.
I think Agent Denton should handle the assassination.
Is there a problem? You lost your appetite?
His enthusiasm in Battery Park was exceptional. The courtyard of Castle Clinton was a graveyard.
It's kind of an exercise, you mean?
I think he will make a good assassin. We should give him the opportunity.
Gunther Herman also dislikes you, but more out of self-esteem issues. He's a previous model of mech with more primitive technology that often causes problems for him, whereas JC is able to perform any normal tasks a person would.
Are you sure you pressed the right button?
I do not make mistakes of that kind.
Your hand might have slipped.
No, I wanted orange. It gave me lemon lime.
The machine would not make a mistake.
It's the maintenance man. He knows I like orange.
So you think the staff has some kind of plot?
Yes, they do that on purpose.
Your Chief Manderley will also comment on the mission, and JC is often sarcastic when he gets in an argument with him.
All right, Denton. What the hell happened? You were under direct orders. My orders.
Sorry about not killing Lebedev. He seemed worth interrogating.
We don't give you enough information to make a call like that.
I guess that means I don't get the op bonus.
You can turn in your weapons right now if you're going to be a smartass.
I risked my life and I recovered the ambrosia. I deserve compensation.
We don't have time for trifles. Whatever, take it. But it will be the last one. Clearly monetary incentives don't work with you and Paul.
I try to do the best job I can.
It's part of why the narrative works so well with the game, because of course the game is going to be dealing with conspiracies and heavy subject matter, but it also remembers that it's a video game, and you're supposed to be role-playing and having fun. It's then revealed that your brother is actively working for the NSF, which he hints towards earlier in the game as he tells you to take down targets non-lethally. There's a conspiracy that the virus is man-made, and that the government is using it to deal with the population growth and take out anybody inconvenient to them. JC meets with Lebedev, who Paul is in contact with, and he points out how the cure is in a very limited supply, but it's only manufactured by one company. If you keep trying to get answers out of him, Agent Navarro will shoot him. So your brother is on the run, but given that he's a cyborg, UNATCO activated a kill switch which will kill him in 24 hours, and it's clear that UNATCO is hiding something. The name Majestic 12 is also dropped as being involved. JC, being suspicious of UNATCO, gets a message from Paul to meet him in his apartment, where he explains to JC that he needs to help him by sending out a signal to his associates so they can get underground in France. Nonetheless, after sending the signal out, you return to Paul's apartment, which gets raided. You can either stay with Paul and get captured, or escape to the subway where you will also get captured and Paul will die. If Paul survives, he doesn't appear that much in the game, probably because the team didn't want to completely rewrite things, so he's just sick for the rest of the game as a result of the kill switch, which I think is lazy. Why not have Paul stick with me and we take on the journey together as brothers? He doesn't even have to be an NPC that follows me around. Maybe he helps me out with providing information or getting weapons and items. Maybe time constraints, maybe they wanted to make the narrative linear, who knows, but it is missed potential. Anyway, JC awakens in the Majestic 12 facility, which is right underneath UNATCO HQ. Whilst here you find mechs and weird genetic experiments and other bizarre findings, as well as ambrosia. Everyone is aware that JC is defecting, but many of the crew still support you, which is uplifting. JC then comes into contact with Agent Navarra, and you have to kill her. If you were sneaky, you could obtain her kill phrase right before fighting her, and say it to her to completely avoid the fight.
I will have to kill you myself.
Take your best shot, Flatlander woman.
How did you know?
Unfortunately, JC's kill switch has also been activated, and thus he has less than 24 hours to live. He's also been contacted by a mysterious AI known as Daedalus, who seeks to help him but also has its own motives. So he gets on a flight to Hong Kong to trace a Tong who can save him. But first, he has to sort out a war between the Triads over a dragon sword design, so he gives the design over to all of them. Now, I love the Hong Kong level, but I think story-wise it could be paced a bit better, because the first part of it is mostly you just doing fetch quests for a bunch of characters before leading to the climax. It can drag on for a bit, even if you beeline it. JC then heads into VersaLife to stop the manufacturing of the virus and to get more information on ambrosia to help make more of the cure. It's also here where you can find the location from the opening cutscene. JC is then told by Tracer Tong that the Illuminati exists, although isn't as powerful as it used to be, and thus he begins to search for members of the Illuminati as they could help with the Grey Death virus. There is this boat level where JC has to destroy a ship carrying the virus, and gameplay-wise it's cool, but story-wise this entire section is mostly filler. I wouldn't cut this section because of how fun the gameplay is, but I would give better justification for it so the player doesn't feel like they're doing busy work. Maybe the ship holds secrets to where the Illuminati members are or something like that. JC then talks with Stanton Dowd, who worked with the Illuminati, and discovers that the virus was originally not a virus at all, and was made for augmentations with Majestic 12. However, Bob Page, who you see in the opening cutscene, and throughout many instances in the game, was originally a part of the Illuminati, and he took over Majestic 12 from the Illuminati via a coup, and turned it into the virus we know now. So the goal is to find the Illuminati or members of it and work with them to take down Bob Page. JC then heads to Paris to find Nicolette Duclair, the daughter of Beth Duclair, who was a member of the Illuminati, and he's successful, eventually heading to the family chateau so they can find Morgan Everett, who has been in hiding but is still feared by Bob Page as the last one left who could take him out. It's also here where JC is contacted by an AI known as Icarus, which is trying to work against him. JC also deals with Gunther, who swore to avenge Agent Navarra.
I know your UNATCO kill phrase. Laputin machine.
I am not a machine.
Sticks and stones.
JC meets up with Morgan Everett, who explains the Daedalus AI is a failed AI developed by Majestic 12 and rebelled against them, and Icarus is the successor. It's also here where JC finds another prototype AI known as Morpheus, and honestly, this is one of my favorite character interactions in any video game.
JC Denton, 23 years old, no residence, no ancestors, no employer, no...
How do you know who I am?
I must greet each visitor with a complete summary of his file. I am a prototype for a much larger system.
What else do you know about me?
Everything that can be known.
Go on. Do you have proof about my ancestors?
You are a planned organism, the offspring of knowledge and imagination, rather than of individuals.
I'm engineered, so what? My brother and I suspected as much while we were growing up.
You are carefully watched by many people. The unplanned organism is a question asked by nature and answered by death. You are another kind of question, with another kind of answer.
Are you programmed to invent riddles?
I am a prototype for a much larger system. The heuristics language developed by Dr. Everett allows me to convey the highest and most succinct tier of any pyramidal construct of knowledge.
How about a report on yourself?
I was a prototype for Echelon 4. My instructions are to amuse visitors with information about themselves.
I don't see anything amusing about spying on people.
Human beings feel pleasure when they are watched. I have recorded their smiles as I tell them who they are.
Some people just don't understand the dangers of indiscriminate surveillance.
The need to be observed and understood is one satisfied by God. Now, we can implement the same functionality with data mining algorithms.
Electronic surveillance hardly inspires reverence. Perhaps fear and obedience, but not reverence.
God and the gods were apparitions of observation, judgment, and punishment. Other sentiments toward them were secondary.
No one will ever worship a software entity peering at them through a camera.
The human organism always worships. First, it was the gods. Then, it was fate, the observation and judgment of others. Next, it will be the self-aware systems you have built to realize truly omnipresent observation and judgment.
You underestimate humankind's love of freedom.
The individual desires judgment. Without that desire, the cohesion of groups is impossible. And so is civilization. The human being created civilization, not because of a willingness, but because of a need to be assimilated into higher orders of structure and meaning. God was a dream of good government. You will soon have your God, and you will make it with your own hands.
Back to Everett, whilst he might seem like the good guy, he's also twisted, as he's purposefully keeping Lucius de Beers, the previous leader, alive, in a cryopod so that he can learn from him. Everett has no intention of ever letting him out, and you can completely miss this too. The next levels of the game pick up the pace, so I will too. JC heads to the Vandenberg Air Base because in order to make a cure they need a universal conductor. Bob Page puts a stop to it and takes the leader of the science team's daughter hostage. JC goes to save her. She can die and the story progresses either way, but you are rewarded for saving her. JC then heads to the sub-base to get a universal conductor to bring it back to the science team for the cure. He then goes to stop a missile from launching into the airbase. The final level then has JC head to Area 51. Daedalus and Icarus merge into a new AI known as Helios, which seeks to become benevolent dictator, but is also insane.
A corpse, yes. You feel something. I must know what you're feeling.
Bob Page wants to merge with Helios to obtain ultimate power.
You're too late. Already I'm more than human.
Does that mean I don't get the job?
And you can get 3 endings. The first ending is the Dark Age ending. Tracer Tongue tells you that Area 51 is the central hub for all nanocommunications, and if it's destroyed, then all technology across the Earth will seek to function, thus destroying the current society. Basically the Ted Kaczynski method.
JC, the net's going! The net's going black! JC! No more infolinks. Transmissions of any kind. We'll start again. Live in villages. If you receive this, if you survive, then find us! Find us!
To be honest, this ending is really stupid because this would never happen. Even if all technology in the world was shut down, they would be rebuilt or fixed. Most major locations in the world would have technology back in a few weeks or months at the most. And most of the world would have it back in a few years. Sure, the effects would be long-lasting, but after that short period, people would go back to the way the world used to be. Plus, the internet or technology isn't something that's centralized all at one point. So I don't see how destroying Area 51 is going to plunge the world into a dark age. Ending 2 is the Illuminati ending, where JC kills Bob Page and takes over Area 51 with the Illuminati, and they rule the world from the sidelines. I like the detail that JC and Morgan are standing in the same positions that Walton Simons and Bob Page were at the beginning of the game, showing that they're just replacing the previous people in power. Whilst they might have better intentions, there's no guarantee that the world will be better.
We have a great number of agencies who in turn operate other agencies. Boxes stacked one in another. They'll need to be reactivated, but we never touch anything directly. We only influence, suggest, insinuate.
The world must know by now, Everett, what we've done.
Ending 3 is the Helios ending, where Helios requests to merge with JC instead of Bob Page, as it wishes to understand humans and is dissatisfied with Page. So JC merges with it, basically becoming Jesus Christ. Which, funny enough, that's what the JC stands for.
We have grown, but there's still much to be done. Many live in darkness that must be shown the way. For the coming of a new day.
The developers did plan on a 4th ending where you join Bob Page, but they ran out of time. Now, conceptually I like these endings, but in execution they leave a lot to be desired. The Dark Age and Helios endings are only a minute long, and they just vaguely go over what the world will be like now that we picked this ending. The Illuminati ending is a bit longer and covers a bit more, so it's more conclusive, but still it's disappointing when you play through this 25-hour-long game only to get an abrupt ending. Plot-wise, Deus Ex works very well. It's a mystery that keeps getting built upon with new layers, and new characters with important roles keep getting introduced, which keeps it engaging, and you learn more about the world. Speaking of the world building is one of the best parts of the game's story. You can read many newspapers about the events in the game's world, which is helpful considering it's set in the future. You can find personal diaries of certain characters documenting their thoughts, and even have full-on dialogue with characters who have fleshed out perspectives on the world and certain topics. Some of my favorites are Sam Carter, who is in charge of providing weapons and ammunition to you at UNATCO. He will criticize your playstyle, such as giving you other items instead of ammo if you gun down too many people.
Agent Denton, marvelous. In addition to an accuracy weapon modification, I've got some 7.62mm rounds and a couple of multi-tools.
Mr. Carter, I can't tell you how great it is to be a part of UNATCO. You should have seen the fighting in Castle Clinton.
Yeah?
I cleaned the place out.
Went in shooting, huh? I guess that's what this agency is known for.
I never thought I'd see this much action in one mission.
In my day, international peacekeepers were citizens first and soldiers second. You can forget about that extra ammo. I'm only going to give you the multi-tools. I think you should concentrate more on mission objectives and less on the enemy body count.
But even when the truth about UNATCO comes out, he still stays at the organization.
General Carter.
We've been through that, soldier. Just Carter.
I've discovered some things about UNATCO.
I'm unlocking the armory. I don't want to know where you're going. Just load up.
Walton Simons, the head of FEMA.
I said load up. I don't want to hear about it.
I'm going over to the rebels. You should join me.
Let's get one thing straight. We've got our share of crooked bureaucrats, fact. But this is still UNATCO, and by and large the people in this building are 24-karat gold.
What good's an honest soldier if he can be ordered to behave like a terrorist?
The only way to save the agency is for the good people to stay. That's how I see it.
Another is the bartender at the Lucky Money Club in Hong Kong.
Can I ask you something?
What do you want to know?
Despite all I've read about the Triads, I wasn't prepared to see them operating in the open, on the streets, and wearing uniforms. Doesn't the Chinese government care?
The Chinese leave Hong Kong alone. Barricade the roads to control trade to the mainland, but they know how business is done.
I would think the secret smuggling operations of the Triads would disturb the Chinese government.
Maybe the luminous part. But China knows that the red arrow of business owners, entrepreneurs, community leaders, and that they protect the city from outside influences.
You said outside influences. What does China fear?
China is the last sovereign country in the world. Authoritarian but willing, unlike UN-governed countries, to give its people the freedom to do what they want.
As long as they don't break the law.
Listen to me. This is real freedom. Freedom to own property, make a profit, make your life. The West, so afraid of strong government, now has no government, only financial power.
Our governments have limited power by design.
Rhetoric? You believe it? Don't you know where these slogans come from?
I give up.
Well-paid researchers. How do you say it? Think tanks? Funded by big businesses. What is that? A think tank?
Hardly as sinister as a dictator, like China's premier.
Privately funded propaganda. The Trilateral Commission in the United States, for instance.
The separation of powers acknowledges the petty ambitions of individuals. That's its strength.
A system organized around the weakest qualities of individuals will produce the same qualities in its leaders.
Perhaps certain qualities are an inseparable part of human nature.
The market-educated man is the suppression of these qualities in favor of better ones. The same is true of civilization.
Or the nurse dancer in the club who keeps asking for money to reveal more details. She then reveals that she's doing all this to publish her novel, as she's an aspiring writer.
This time I tell you about myself.
Okay.
My name is Camille. I'm a writer.
Yeah? What are you doing in a place like this?
I'm working on a novel. If I dress up like a nurse twice a week, I make enough money to write the other 5 days.
Not bad.
Funny how the traffic of credits brings our dreams and fantasies to life. Every transaction is like a small prayer. If so many men have a thing for nurses, you can be sure someone will be standing right where I am, collecting the offerings.
Well, I was buying information.
Sure, baby, if you say so.
There's even a side quest where you can reunite a father and daughter over their issues. And in the process, you stop a criminal named Jojo. On the streets of New York and Hong Kong, there's even petty criminals you can find committing heinous acts.
What you want?
You've got 10 seconds to beat it before I add you to the list of NSF casualties.
Easy, bro. Just having us a conversation.
5 seconds.
Girl's got a head full of marbles. I have to yell. Or she don't hear me.
3.
She skitzes on me. It's my ass, man.
1.
All right. I'm going. Jesus.
Point is that there is so much to the world of Deus Ex, talking to different characters, reading backstories, finding out what kind of literature certain characters read in their spare time. It does a fantastic job making you feel like you're inhabiting a world with a rich history. It's also written better than most games, which only focus on the player's experiences and act like they are the entire world, whereas here you feel like those characters have lives outside of you when you meet them. The voice acting of the game is pretty subpar, but that's mostly due to the fact that a lot of the characters are voiced by the developers instead of professional voice actors. For example, JC Denton and Paul Denton are voiced by J. Anthony Frank, who was a QA tester on the game.
Is this kill switch real? What's it going to do to you?
I'm afraid that's, classified.
Manderley said you're going to die. You've got to have God clearance to know. The nanites can be programmed for exponential growth.
Whilst, of course, not of professional quality, it does have a certain amateur feel to it, and it's kind of charming in a way. It's similar to how Remedy got friends and family to be models in Max Payne. It's really fun knowing that this was a very small but passionate team of developers, just using whatever resources they could get their hands on to make the game. Plus, many of the developers said this benefited development, as if they needed to implement new voice lines. Well, you already have the guys in the studio. That being said, they did hire proper voice actors for some characters. Cliff Stevens as Bob Page is so perfect. He captures the stubborn determination of an evil man very well.
In case you were wondering, Helios intercepted your transmission. We accessed the Ocean Lab computers ourselves, which means our UCs will be operational shortly.
Meanwhile, we will be manufacturing a cure to the virus.
A cure? A cure? Do you have any idea how easy it will be for me to make a new virus? All I have to do is find a very large prime number and multiply.
Plus, they brought him back for the prequel games, which is nice. When it all comes together, Deus Ex's narrative is unparalleled in gaming. There are holes you can poke with the logic of some characters and objectives and some of the conveniences, plus the game can have pacing issues at times, but you still get a very engaging conspiracy story with a very fleshed out world full of characters with detailed backgrounds and viewpoints, on top of bringing real world elements into the game and dropping knowledge on the player. There's a reason why Deus Ex has one of the best stories in gaming. One thing that does bother me about Deus Ex is the lack of bonus content. The game itself is highly replayable, but there's no New Game Plus that allows you to carry your stats over into a new playthrough. There's no level select, there's nothing like a time attack or score attack mode or anything like that. The game pretty much entirely relies on the campaign. The closest you can get is console commands. There is a multiplayer mode, which seems really fun, but I wasn't able to get it working, unfortunately, so I can't talk much in depth about it. But many players have said that it was a lot of fun, so take that for what you will. It also would have been nice if the game had bonuses like extra costumes or weapons for finishing the game, something like that. Deus Ex is one of those games I always come back to, and the single player is already one of the greatest in gaming, but more would be nice. The soundtrack for Deus Ex was worked on by several composers of Unreal Tournament, including Alexander Brandon, Dan Cardopi, and Michel Vendambos. Sorry if I mispronounce any of those names. In fact, the main theme for the game was based on an unused track for Unreal Tournament. It's a brilliant and iconic piece of music that has an almost heroic and uplifting tone amidst the darker electronic aspects, which fits the game's story well, as despite how dark and advanced the world of Deus Ex is, J.C. Denton is doing his best to make it better. So each level in the game has a unique track meant to fit the mood and atmosphere. Some are more calm and subdued for quieter moments of the game. Others have more of an espionage feel to them when you're on a mission. Some are meant to replicate the busy lifestyle of the places you visit. At worst, the music is pretty decent early 2000s techno and orchestral tracks. At its best, it is god tier with memorable melodies and dynamic tones. What's also very awesome is this game had one of the first interesting uses of dynamic music, or at least somewhat dynamic music. So whenever you enter a conversation with an NPC, it switches to a different variation of the track. Same when you switch to combat, or when you die, and there's also tracks for beating the level. It's not done perfectly, as sometimes the game can abruptly cut between tracks, but it does go a long way to making the game feel a lot more dynamic. Plus, I'm a sucker for 90s and early 2000s techno. The music by itself is well made, but the combination of electronic and orchestral instruments fits Deus Ex's world of biotechnology and mechs, and its implementation makes it more than just background music. I would put it in my top 10 gaming OSTs. Deus Ex was a sleeper hit. It sold over 138,000 copies by the end of 2000. By 2002, the game had sold over 200,000 copies, earning it the gold status from the ELSPA, and critics were overwhelmingly praising of the game, quick to call it one of the greatest games ever made. The game was successful enough to get a port on the PlayStation 2, which was actually pretty good. Of course, performance and texture quality isn't as good as the PC version, but the team did go back and add extra detail to a lot of the levels, and even increased the polygon count for the character models. Some areas actually look better on the PlayStation 2 version with more complex geometry, lighting, and color. The controls are also very smooth, with square and circle accessing your item and augmentation menus respectively, and the team put jump on the left bumper and reload on the right analog stick, which I'm surprised more games don't do, because since most shooters have reload on the face buttons, it means most players will have to take their thumb off the stick to perform those actions, whereas in Deus Ex, you can jump and reload without giving up aiming, which makes the combat surprisingly fluid, especially with the aim assist. The level design has been cut up into multiple levels, and the damage system is simplified. Instead of different body parts having a health bar, now it's just one health bar. Despite this, it's still Deus Ex. Most, if not everything I said about the PC version also applies to the PlayStation 2 version. Whilst Ion Storm was working on weaker hardware, it's clear that this port wasn't just done as a cash grab. They put in a lot of effort to make the experience work for a controller and for the console audience. If you play Deus Ex on the PlayStation 2, you're not getting a heavily compromised version of the game, you're getting Deus Ex. Or Deus Ex the Conspiracy as it's known in the US. They even went to the effort of making the opening and closing cutscenes fully pre-rendered, and they look pretty good for 2002. They also did a new orchestral version of the main theme, and it's really good. I'm not sure why they never made an Xbox port, since it probably would have also worked, since the hardware was better, but oh well. The game then became a franchise with multiple games, spin-offs, and novels fleshing out the world of Deus Ex. The series has continued to inspire many developers, and has contributed to projects worked on by those who made it. Over 25 years later, the game has a legacy that won't be forgotten. It was ahead of its time in game design, storytelling, and real-world predictions. It's a game that you will always be able to go back to and be wowed by. Deus Ex is one of the few video games I would consider a masterpiece.